The texturing phase. So for texturing the floor, I spent a bit amount of time to looking for the right references. Obviously, I tried to find the same pattern that I have in my painting. I'm trying to stay as close as possible as the reference. Um, so I try to spend a lot of time at this stage to make sure that um, I get the right pictures, the right images, so I can build a bit of a library for this project, and use them along to actually paint the floor. I'm also trying to give it a bit of a breakup in the texture pattern. They don't all look the same, so I'm trying to find different colors and different tint. Uh, some part of the ground has been wet, obviously. People just they just uh, drop water or drop some kind of product on it, so it does look different. There's also a bit of mold sometimes, and the some part of the ground is also broken. It is actually a bit damaged. I'm not sculpt. I did not sculpt this in detail. I pretty much just cheated with the texture, and I will also keep cheating on it as I actually paint. The paint will also help me a lot to achieve that. What I also plan for the ground is that this will be repeated across the scene. So it will be repeated for the middle ground and the background. But instead of keeping the render, what I was thinking to do for this was to just keep part of it, of what I want, and paint over what will make it look like it is an extension and it's not just a duplicate or a clone of that floor. Especially the foreground one where it will be mostly visible. Also, something I'm not showing here, but I like to test my maps before they are ready, and I test them in the shot. So before I'm finishing them, I actually export the maps, like a rough version of them. I pipe them into a shader, and I see how it reacts with the light in the shot. I know this is a bit of jumping ahead, but by doing this, I will actually know what I do like and what I don't like about the texture, or how is actually it is placed in the composition of the shot. For example, I think while I was doing it and I was testing it in a shot, there was a one part of the texture that I really liked, and it was not visible, and that was just because it was in a shadow. So by doing this early, I know that I can actually just modify it and change it. So I can change it basically at an early stage. For each object, I export a diffuse, a bump, and a specular map. For the diffuse, well, it's just the my images that I worked out that I either modified in Photoshop or get them online. For my bump, I'm duplicating my diffuse and I'm desaturating it. Sometimes I do level the map, but I usually don't do this. If it works out of the box, I just keep it. For my specular map, I do the same as the bump. So I duplicate the bump since it's already desaturated, and then I level the texture to get the contrast. This is very basic and a simple way to do texture. I On other projects that I worked on, I did more complex texturing where I had to layer more because I needed more control. But since for this, what we're gonna do is texture as a base and then paint over, and we will be able to do the changes later on to break it up to change parts if we want to. So we kind of have a bit more choice by doing this and a bit more flexibility. But for the wall though, I did add more layers. This is how I break it down. I apply a base layer, which will be the foundation upon what I will add on it. And for the wall, that is the concrete texture. I also import my cameras in Mari to preview the angles. And once my base is laid out, I then add the second layer, which is, in this case, is everything that dirty up the wall. Things like grease, oil, and rust leaks, all that. And then I add a third layer, which would be the graffitis, or everything that human would probably write on the walls. And then when I'm done with that, I just export my maps, the diffuse, bump, and specular. And from there, it's pretty much the same process. I just keep repeating that process for most of my assets. For this asset, as you can see, I knew that it would be mostly in the dark, and it would be mostly covered by the shadows. So really, I did this one as simply as possible. I laid out the base everywhere first, and only at strategic places I did add the second and third layer of textures, which I think is the painting or the splashes and all that. So by trying to pre-light my environment really roughly, based on my intention, and testing my material really quick, all that is done really simply, just to see how it behaves in the scene. That allowed me to pick and prioritize what do I want to paint and where do I want to paint it. The way I textured the AC was also very generic. I didn't add more than 1 or 2 layers, I believe, and I kept mostly the base, because as I was planning on doing the variations in the paint overs and not in the texture. I always knew that by doing this, I can either go back to the textures and re-render it again, and then light it and render again, or just paint it after if necessary. So I just want a bit of a flexibility here.